Hi everybody, this is Maria Flynn. I'm a Vice President at Jobs for the Future, and I want to welcome you today to our webinar where we're going to be talking with you about some of the services that Jobs for the Future can provide that can support your the tax proposals that you're working on. So we are going to be recording this webinar, and it will be posted to our website shortly after we're through. We're going to be hearing from two of my program directors today. I'm joined today by Barbara Endel and Nate Anderson, who have both been very involved with our current work with TAACCCT grantees, and so you're going to be hearing a lot from them. We hope that this is helpful to you as you're putting together your ideas for this final round of TAACCCT funding. With about 2 months left to go in the process. What we're going to cover today is threefold. We're going to talk a little bit about the experience that we've had as a technical assistance provider to some current TAACCCT grantees, both in funding round 1 and round 2, to talk to you in some detail about the services we've been able to provide them as they've been implementing their projects. Then we're going to switch and talk a bit about the specific services that we're able to provide both to single college proposals and to consortia of colleges, and how they align to the core elements that are outlined in the SGA, and also talk a little bit about the Career Pathways CAP cluster strategy and how JFF is positioned to help you with that element as well. And then finally, at the end, we're going to talk a little bit just about the lessons learned that we have gathered over the past few years, both in terms of what you might want to consider doing now as you are putting a proposal together, and then also in the hopeful chance that you will be awarded funding, things that you should do soon after award to ensure successful implementation. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Jobs for the Future, just in brief, we are a nonprofit organization that does work around the country. We are based in Boston and Washington, D.C., and we've been around for about 30 years. All of our work is centered on the overarching goal to help young people and adults attain post-secondary credentials and to advance in the labor market. So we do a mix of policy and practice work across high school reform, community college reform, workforce development efforts, sector initiatives, and a lot of things in those areas. And we're engaged in a number of national initiatives that we'll touch on today as we go through the slides. So, so we actually have the bulk of our experience is around consortia projects, but we also have worked with some single college projects as well. So the one kind of disclaimer I guess I wanted to give at the beginning is that we get asked a lot if we are grant writers, and so we actually are not really in the market of doing grant writing services. Really the purpose of today is to talk about the kinds of technical assistance, coaching, labor market information support that we can provide to projects really as kind of strategic partners through the course of your tax work. So in just a second, I'm going to turn it over to Nate, but the final thing we wanted to ask in order to kind of continue the interactivity portion of the webinar is, as we go along, if you would like to enter into the chat box kind of the most challenging issue that you're coming up against while you're putting your proposal together, whether that be employer engagement, engaging your local workforce investment board, or other things, if you just want to give a sense of what is that kind of hurdle that you're trying to overcome, again, give us a good sense of who's on the line and might be able to get some conversation going among those participating. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nate Anderson, who is going to talk about the work that we're currently doing with a few of our other TAACCCT grantees.
Great. Thank you, Maria, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon to most of you, and I guess some of you may still be on morning time. My name is Nate Anderson. I'm a project director here at JFF, and I've done some work with several different TAACCCT consortiums over the last couple years, and I thought I would pick two examples to share with you all to give you a sense of the type of technical assistance that JFF can provide in a real context as sort of a way to demonstrate, I think probably most importantly, the range of services that JFF can provide, as well as access to JFF's national network of subject matter experts, which is really, I think, a benefit when you're trying to look for very targeted, very customized technical assistance for the projects you're trying to do. So the first one I picked out here is work we did with a consortium of all the colleges in Massachusetts. It was a round one TAACCCT grantee. And we've worked with them now for 2 years on 2 different contracts. The first area of work that we really focused on was around putting together a series of technical assistance institutes for all the colleges in the consortium. We did 3 of those over the course of about 2 months in the state, and they were built around different technical assistance topics, particularly around career pathways and sort of accelerated models. And we worked on both the logistics side of those meetings, as well as the assistance with finding the right subject matter experts to bring into the conversation to lead those sessions, as well as the evaluation and outcomes from each of the institutes as well. We didn't do as much of the event planning side of that particular meeting, but that we do have staff, phenomenal staff at JFF that can do that work as well. In addition, we did on-demand coaching there, technical assistance, so the colleges were able to identify areas where they were struggling with the implementation of their model, and JFF staff would come in and or national experts would come in and do an assessment of the work that they were doing and provide follow-up advice, as well as resources or tools that they could use to target what they're doing. And I just picked some of the more popular topics that we worked on with them. In many cases was near to the end of the grant, so they were more interested in talking about sustainability, funding models, cost modeling, things like that, as well as non-credit to credit, which was a big issue in Massachusetts at the time, and data-driven decision-making, so really making use of the data that they had. And then we also did a consortium-wide series of trainings, and those are ongoing right now, around the use of real-time labor market information to sort of support program design and implementation, and knowing what employers in your region really need and want, as well as some work around unifying career services, which is ongoing as well. So essentially creating a common approach to career services at the college, as opposed to a number of different approaches depending on where the student enters. And then ongoing support there as well. And then we can go to the next slide. And then a second example here, and I saw Christian Lagarde is on the call today, so I'm queuing you up, Christian, if you want to say a few words at the end of my description. Christian is the consortium lead for this particular project, so he may have something to add here. So the Gulf Coast Consortium is a series of 9 colleges in Louisiana and Mississippi, and they were around 2 grantee. And we have an ongoing contract with them to provide much more targeted coachings, so more specific to each of the individual colleges and in an ongoing fashion, so not an on-demand kind of approach, which includes site visits and things like that. We've done some real-time labor market reports for them, as opposed to actually training individuals to use real-time labor market information like we did in Massachusetts. Here we actually produced the reports themselves that showed what their regional labor markets, the sort of in-demand credentials and skills for the career pathways that they had in place. We're in the process of updating an employer engagement toolkit and customizing it to the consortium members so that they'll have resources for their frontline staff to reach out and engage the employers in their community for recent graduates. And then we're doing quite a bit of policy work, particularly around braided funding, which is JFF has a braided funding toolkit that we've developed that lists a number of different federal funding streams that are sort of relevant for career pathways, particularly for low-income individuals, as well as a bunch of strategies that you might be able to use to either raise new revenue or dedicate revenue in different ways in order to sustain and scale the work that you're doing. So we're using that, and we have a series of trainings that we do as well. And then lastly, we have run technical assistance institutes at some of our national convenings where the Gulf Coast Consortium members would be there and help set up the agenda for those. So those were 2 examples of real work that we've been doing recently. Christian, I don't know if you're able to chime in, but I did want to give you a chance to say something if you wanted to.
Sure. No, Nate, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't on mute. No, that's Nate. You surmised and sort of wrapped up exactly what you guys are doing on paper for us. But I do want to go back to what Nate just said. And again, this is Christian Lagarde. I'm the Consortium Operation Manager. But what Nate was saying about opening up their network has been an enormous win for us. And it's not just in the writing phase with bringing those partners that they come with Washington State and the IBES and NCWE and NCTN and who's ranking at PPM. It's a small thing, and it's really what JFF has done sort of outside of our scope of work. They're a solution-based. You guys have been a great solution-based organization for us. When we need help, we exit, and you guys find solutions for it. So it's really, I did want to sort of reiterate that part, Nate. It's about what you guys are doing sort of outside of the scope of work that has been very, very valuable to us. But yeah, as Nate just described, all those things that are listed there, and we're at our midpoint, and we're halfway there, and we have a lot of work to do. So we're glad that JFF is in the passenger seat with us.
Great, thank you, Christian. Appreciate it. So now I'm going to turn it over to Barbara Endel, who's another program director here at JFF, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the services as they relate to the SGA right now.
Nate, thank you so much. This is Barbara Endel, Program Director, Jobs for the Future. We did have a question from one of the participants, Nate, that we were hoping that you could answer, and that is, can you talk a little bit more about what things are included in the Employer Engagement Toolkit?
Yeah, that's a piece of the work that I don't work on directly, so I'll just have to summarize it. That's Gloria Mwase, who's another member here at JFF, is managing that. But JFF has one of the strengths of the organization for JFF historically, and particularly in the area that Barbara and myself and Maria work, is really around linking credential-based career pathway programs to jobs in the community and ensuring that there's an employer piece in that pipeline, so that you're bringing not only resources for reaching out to employers. So how do you frame your message? How do you find employers in your community? How do you ensure that they're the right fit for the types of programs that you're producing? Those sorts of pieces of information on the front end, but lots of sort of case study-driven examples of ways in which you can be successful in ensuring that your graduates are hireable to those employers, and that can be anything from strategies for ensuring that that credentials are of value in your community. So not only offering those credentials, but ensuring that employers understand the competencies that are embedded in them, that they see the value in hiring individuals who have those as opposed to individuals who don't. It could be things like strategies like internships or on-the-job training programs as a way to transition students from learning into work more seamlessly rather than going through the job application process cold. And it could be things like getting your employers to be engaged beyond just your industry advisory committees, more involved in either program design itself or in even funding positions or providing resources to be able to support. So it's a broad, very broad sort of set of strategies that people can use to be available online. And it's pulling from a lot of JFF's prior experience. And I'll give Maria a chance to weigh in on it too, because she knows some more about it also.
Sure. I think that Nate gave a great description, but basically, it does pull from examples across JFF's work, including the work that we do as part of the National Fund for Workforce Solutions, which is one of the leading demand-driven workforce efforts in the country, and is a recipient of one of the Administration Social Innovation Fund grant. So it really pulls examples from across JFF's body of work. And before I turn it back to Barbara, I just want to, I know we're getting a few questions through the chat about specific like requirements in the solicitation. And so I guess I should have said in the beginning that we aren't really planning on going through kind of an overview of DOL's solicitation on this webinar, but we will post a link to the solicitation on our page, and I think that DOL has done a more of a technical webinar. We can direct folks to that recording as well. I'll turn it back to Barbara.
Great, thanks Maria. So again, good afternoon or good morning everyone. I'm Barbara Endel, Program Director, Jobs for the Future, and I'm also the National Project Director for Accelerating Opportunity. So thanks for joining us for the webinar today and taking time out of preparing your proposal. We think it'll be very valuable for you to really learn and see how we can support your efforts. As you know, you're responsible for essentially designing and developing strategies across all 6 of the core strategies. But when we looked at the body of Jobs for the Future's work and where our expertise is located, we felt that there were, in particular, 4 areas that would be important and things that we could support. So if you look at the top of the chart, I'm going to go ahead and dive into essentially career pathways design and implementation. This is an area where Jobs for the Future has really been part of the career pathways movement for over a decade and has been able to understand how to sequence and design different elements of the curriculum and the pathways that all add up to getting students, particularly trade-impacted workers and others, into a set of earning credentials and into the labor market. And so career pathways aligns to the proposal's core element number 2, and that is really where the bulk of the points are going to be coming from. That whole section, starting with evidence-based design, is worth 55 points. So we feel as if you get this right and you get funded, we can very much help you ensure that the pathways are real, relevant, and connected to the labor market. The second area of expertise basically aligns community college programs with workforce system initiatives and other projects. And this aligns with 2 of the SGA core elements, specifically aligning with the public workforce system, core element number 4, and aligning with previously funded TAACCCT grantees. Now this was something that our colleague Christian just mentioned. Jobs for the Future has an extensive network of community college partners across the country. We've been working both on the ground and through policy efforts and really have a keen understanding of how colleges and what they're doing, and can help you identify a small group of previously funded grantees that you can connect with and help connect essentially what they're doing with what you're doing and learn and leverage and share. We were so fortunate to have the Gulf Coast IT Consortium. They were at a peer learning meeting we just had a few weeks ago. We were able to bring in 2 previously funded TAACCCT grantees where they had some lessons learned, kind of what to do and then what to avoid, that I think the team found very helpful. And then lastly, with sector-based approaches to workforce development and engaging employers, this aligns to the sector strategies and employer engagement core element. This to me is one of the most difficult, I think, that's really part of this proposal process. Sector strategies were not included in the first 3 rounds to any great extent. So to be able to help you really think through and implement sector strategies where your employers are stepping up with their level of engagement and their activities, I think will be really very important. So we're excited about being able to offer you some support in these key areas. And let me dive into each one in a little bit more detail. So around the pathway design, as you know, the SGA is asking for stacked and lattice credentials. And obviously the reason for this is so that students across a continuum can have multiple entry and exit points and be able to basically earn a credential but keep going on a pathway where they won't waste time or money and things will articulate and transfer to the next pathway without wasting time. So we've helped basically design pathways where some programs have been only designed as, for example, 2-year programs, and we've been able to basically help modularize, or if you will, chunk that curriculum in ways that made more sense so that students could take off bite-sized pieces of the pathway and make their way along it while still coming out on the other end with a great credential. So we can help with that element very much so. Earlier, Nate mentioned our work with labor market information. And for this, we've got a very robust model that we've been working on called Credentials That Work, with a network of current colleges who are focusing a lot more on how to ensure that the curriculum and the credentials that they're offering really do meet labor market needs. And we're able to basically work on that in two ways, with both looking at traditional projected labor market information combined with real-time spidering technology. And it's a really powerful way to ensure your curriculum is adding up. That is what we're calling our dynamic skills audit, and I'll get into a little bit more detail of that in a few minutes. The next point I'd like to make is really between this idea between non-credit and credit-bearing courses. And let me be very clear. First of all, Department of Labor is not going to be funding non-credit courses, but we know that most colleges across the country have a non-credit or workforce development program or continuing education department. And for this, we've been able to help basically bridge the non-credit to credit pathways piece, so you've got a better pipeline of students that may be entering your funded project. And so again, the goal is to have many different students with a diverse background, including trade-impacted workers, veterans, other unemployed, have a way to get into pathways to get a credential and into a good job. Better connecting your non-credit pathways is exactly the way to do this. And so we can help you with these bridges between programs, and also helping with policy where you can figure out transcripted credit so that students don't waste their time or money. Okay, secondly, moving forward, effective practices related to student support services. You'll notice in the Virtual Career Network, that there's a reference to the Virtual Career Network inside the SGA, and this is something where Department of Labor and Department of Ed, et cetera, has essentially okay. Yes, well, basically the Virtual Career Network is mentioned in the pathway in the SGA, and this is something that we would really encourage all of you to take a look at. This is a career exploration piece. It's a platform funded by DOL, and it originally started with jobs in allied health, green jobs, and transportation. But the point here is that there's no charge to it, and this is one of the support services that you can really consider including and embedding in your program. I think Department of Labor would love to see how the commitment to their products and services are being leveraged by potential grantees. Okay, the second point, in terms of supporting the implementation of integrated education and career-focused training programs, this is something where JFF this is really in our sweet spot. We've got a ton of history around helping students basically co-enroll into various programs, including a program called Accelerating Opportunity, where underprepared adult learners are able to co-enroll into career technical education programs in addition to their enrolling in foundational learning, which really shortens their sequence and makes it possible to access and get into their credential and through their pathway much more quickly. So it's something we definitely support models around this and can help you design these sorts of things as we move forward. Okay, so let's move forward and talk about how to leverage our services around strategic alignment, elements 4 and 5. So basically, we've got lots of experience around connecting to the public workforce system. This also includes state agencies, foundation funding efforts, and for this, to us, I think we've got many different case studies, and we're able to really elevate the kinds of great partnerships that is resulting in effective practices. And so for this, I think we can definitely connect the briefs that we've developed along student support services and building partnerships. Those are things we all have at Jobs for the Future. And we can elevate really the kinds of partnerships and the kinds of activities that's resulted as a result of the partnership. So we think that that's something we could definitely help with. Hosting and facilitating convenings is another core aspect of what we can help with. as Nate mentioned earlier, together with both Massachusetts and with the Gulf Coast Consortium in Louisiana and Mississippi, we can help you design institutes for your colleges if you're in a consortium, or for your college in particular to help convene the stakeholders that you'll need internally and externally, including certainly work with employers and employer engagement. And then lastly, conducting asset and stakeholder mapping analysis. This is something we can do as you're getting started in the work. To me, the important point around here is that if you're part of a consortium or you're part of a college, how do you link up the work that you're doing inside your Department of Labor grant with the things that you're already doing, so it doesn't feel as if it's an add-on or a burden, but rather something that can be sustainable and that can integrate into the core of your work. Okay, and then last, with sector strategies, element number 6, again, this is a major component new to the SGA and one that will require a lot of thinking. Jobs for the Future has had some tremendous experience over the last 5 or 6 years with the National Fund for Workforce Solutions and other work where we've been able to put a lot of energy into helping sector, regional collaboratives and sector strategies really grow. And the way to do that is, again, to go through a process where you've got a multi-source approach to understand what credentials and curriculum are really connecting to the labor market. So for this, we've got an ability to do some very deep analysis where we can either train you to do it or do it for you with our labor market information. Great. Wonderful. And then next, with employer engagement strategies, you know, we think that obviously having traditional advisory councils is a very positive in what most colleges have. And I think what we can bring to the table is another set of high-impact strategies that we've been developing over time and with employers. So we think this is a huge asset we can bring to your consortium or your college, and that is helping really develop strong employer engagement strategies where employers are putting skin in the game, where they can be investing in the pathways, they can be sharing and doing curriculum work with you, they can be teaching courses, they can be doing a number of activities that can help really strengthen your alignment. And then essentially, with the design and implementation of work-based training models, again, Jobs for the Future had an initiative called Jobs to Careers that really highlighted as a set of promising practices how to embed work-based learning training models, especially for frontline workers in the healthcare area. So especially if you're considering a healthcare pathway and set of services, this is something to really connect us with. And then lastly, bolstering engagement of the public workforce system, either community-based organizations and philanthropy. This is something where we've got many promising practices and can really bring to light the partnerships that I think have made the most effective set of services and activities. And I think it helps where we can even bring these conversations in a peer-to-peer sharing with you so that you can really bring what other people are doing to help move forward your own agenda and can help illustrate really the level of ambition and the high-impact strategies that I think many of the promising models that we've been working on can actually do. So with that, I will essentially turn it back over to Maria and to talk about CAPBuster strategies.
Great. So as you're probably aware, the way the solicitation is structured this year, it provides applicants with 3 different ways to basically compete for a somewhat higher amount of resources. And in short, they are, one is around the use of state data systems, one is around engagement of business and industry associations, and the third is around the development of state career pathway systems. And it's the third one around state pathway system, career pathway systems that we feel we are kind of well positioned to add a lot of value. And some of the ways that we have been involved in this to date that we could bring to bear in a new project. One is really looking at how to drive alignment between the state community college systems and adult basic education programs and workforce training systems. So really looking at the alignment of those funding streams at a state level to make pathways more transparent and aligned for students and workers. We are also, we manage a project on behalf of the U.S. Department of Education that is looking at the alignment between high school career and technical education programs and adult programs, adult workforce career pathway systems at the state level. So we also have expertise kind of in alignment between those high school and workforce systems. As Barbara mentioned, we've also done a lot of work around support services and designing those services in a way that can really increase a student's retention and completion rates. And as part of that, looking at how best colleges can partner both with community-based organizations and local workforce investment boards, both at the state and the local level. And finally, kind of again, going back to the JFF network that Nate and Christian mentioned earlier, really being able to pull together and convene partnerships of the right stakeholders, both at a state level and regionally, in order to pull these systems together in a more rational way. So Career Pathways is something that we've been involved with really since the very beginning of that movement, probably 10 years or so ago, and it's something that we remain very committed to. I did want to respond that we got one question about whether or not non-credit courses will be funded, and I think the solicitation really stresses the importance of articulation between non-credit and credit, and the language around that is much stronger than the prior 3 rounds of grants. So we just would want you to really pay attention to that language in the solicitation, and again, we'll provide a link to that for anyone who doesn't already have it. So next, we're going to open it up to questions to see if people have specific questions about how JFF might be able to be of assistance. If you have general questions about what we have seen from our work with current grantees, any questions about basically what the process would be to engage JFF. And so what we would recommend is to really contact us as soon as you're interested, and at the end, the last slide of the presentation will have contact information, which will direct you to me, and then I can in turn kind of direct you to the right people on our staff. So we do, there's a question about whether we charge for our services. We do, in the event that your proposal is funded, then we would charge for services that we provide during the implementation period. So we do not charge for kind of this kind of pre-funding, pre-award phase. But what we have done, we have kind of done things in 2 ways. So in the Bossier Parish example that Christian and Nate spoke of, we were actually, part of that proposal development process and worked with their team, during this proposal development phase to outline what our role could be in support of the project if funded, and went through, a specific scope of work and budgeting process before the proposal was submitted. So that is one way of going about it, and is actually probably our preferred method. But an alternative is more how we have done our work in Massachusetts, which was after the proposal was funded, we were, they issued an RFP and we competed for that technical assistance role. So in other words, we were not kind of named or budgeted for in the proposal, but were engaged after the fact. So either way works. I guess, frankly, we feel that kind of being able to reference our role in a proposal, may help your competitive chances to some degree, just because of the national reach and experience that we have. Don't want to sound to inflate that, but that's kind of at least my personal thinking. And go over some of the lessons that we've learned over the past few years. And while she's talking, you have additional questions, please go ahead and enter them into the chat box.
Thanks, Maria. So hello again, everyone. It's Barbara with Jobs for the Future. And we just have a few what we considered our lessons learned. And it's a little bit like Letterman's Top 10. They're a little bit random, but we think really important and fun lessons to keep in mind as you're going throughout this process. So during the application process, here are a few things that I think we've learned along the way. Number one, start with sustainability in mind from day one. There's an enormous amount of energy and effort to engage stakeholders, get people on your campus working on the design, and it's a lot of money, so that it's going to be a big impact unless there's some planning around how to reallocate resources and institutionalize the work. So if you start with sustainability in mind from day one, as opposed to waiting until the end of the grant period, we think that will really behoove your efforts, absolutely. Number two, ensure everybody has the same understanding of how to count participants and track outcomes. In my work with one of the colleges from an earlier round, she's the project director and said it took them almost a year before they realized not everybody was counting people the same way, and they lost a lot of data because there was not a common understanding. And so one of the ways we recommend doing this is essentially making sure that you've got a process guide in place and have formalized structures to make sure people are understanding how it all works and having that common definition. It's so important to have a good leader at the helm, somebody who really can move the work forward, who's got political sensitivities. I would definitely say you need a full-time project director with broad authority, together with a grant writing team to get your proposal up and running. And even after the project gets moving, somebody really dynamic that can work well with others and really devote a full time to the project. The next one is, so often we can do a lot of work to work with our employers and the workforce system, and are excited. It's a grant opportunity. There's a partnership developed. Folks are willing to commit some things on paper, and then when it actually comes to the implementation and really getting things together, it's harder. And so, our point here is if you can really follow through with high-impact strategies, with engaging with your employers, I think you'll get a lot more out of your experience. Building in ample time for planning. One of the things that we recommend, even if when you get to submitting your proposal, you're likely to have basically created some new positions that you're going to need for this part to run this grant. And if you can actually develop and write those right now, we know it takes usually months for HR departments to approve and get things posted. You want to get it started out of the gate as quickly as possible. Hands down, my colleagues and I have heard this over and over with grantees that have gotten this work started. They wish they could have gotten things started a lot sooner and gotten off the ground sooner with some things that were ahead of it. One of my colleagues in Ohio basically said they didn't ever think they would get the grant, so they didn't do anything, and then they were surprised when they were funded and didn't get started until 9 months into the first year. And then lastly, you all know this, just to communicate, just to really do a good job of structuring your all the colleges or your college together so that you're really communicating quite a lot. And then next, as I just mentioned, once you've got the grant, make sure your job descriptions are set and ready to go, and start hiring now and just get things started. One of the things that we've helped develop other grantees with, and that we think is a really great idea, is an initial kickoff institute, having something like a 2-day retreat to ensure you've got really in-depth understanding of projects across the colleges and partners, especially if you're in a consortium. Make sure your presidents know what they've signed up for and the colleges really know what they've signed up for. The next point about professional development early and just as the initiative evolves, I think hands down, many people assume that there's going to be a common understanding of what that model looks like and that you can do it all fairly easily, but we know professional development is really important, and we can help with that because reform and redesign efforts aren't easy, and that's really something important. If I can go back into do-overs, this is one of the things I would do over with our own work and what we've heard from other colleges, is making those in-person site visits sooner to ensure that implementation occurs. If my good colleague Christian Lagarde is on the line, I think he would concur with this, that getting out and making those site visits is really important. And then next, expect to make and have changes. Early assumptions never work out as anticipated. The models, may not always be there as you thought, and just be willing to be flexible. Another key thing is using the grant requirements as a lever to get the work done. If you can integrate this into the work, into the mission of the college where you're already, initiatives or some things are already off the ground, I think is one of the best things. And then obviously celebrating that success and really making sure that it's well publicized in terms of what you're doing. And then if I haven't said it again, I'll say it one more time, kind of communicate, communicate, communicate. So those are our key lessons that we've learned, and I will turn it back to Maria and see if you have any more questions for us.
Great. So in the final minutes here of our time together, just wanted to see if anyone had any last questions. And in the meantime, we have put up a slide of some key resources. We have started the list with some of the DOL resources, a link to the TAACCCT grant website where you can get information about the projects that have been funded in the first 3 rounds. The next bullet is the link to the this year's solicitation. And then after that, we have a few links to JFF'S services, so a page on our website that gives an overview of the types of services that we've discussed today. Also a list of our Career Pathways publications, which can give you a sense of the approach that we take to that important kind of cap-buster category. And then last week, myself and some national colleagues participated in a webinar hosted by Skills for America's Future about the Round 4 TAACCCT competition, and so we have a link to the recording of that discussion. And then finally, just a link to general Department of Labor resources for grantees and applicants. So we hope that this has been useful to you. If you are interested, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. On the final slide is my email address and also our phone number, and our website address. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we can discuss how we might be able to work together on your proposal. So with that, I hope that you all have a great day, and thanks again for taking the time to talk with us today.